Do you hear us?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're just listening to Bernard and waiting for you. Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have some difficulties. I was with you since the very beginning, but I disappeared. I don't know why. So thank you very much, Mohamed. We are very happy to be with you. It's a great honor to be part of this session and the meeting, the third one, the third CHAMPS one, and I'm very happy. And I would like to thank Bernard also for this excellent first lecture on ischemia. So my talk is about calcified lesion, and we have already discussed a little bit about that during the previous discussion. So what is important to underline is that we see more and more patients with calcified lesion. This is old study from Armstrong, who showed that the percentage of calcified lesion among PCI treated patients is increasing, and I think it will continue to increase like that. So we will have to deal with this kind of lesion more and more in the future. And these lesions are usually underestimated by angio. Of course, we see the calcified lesion more with OCT or IVUS. Even better with stent boost, which is still underused in cath labs. And CT scan is also a very useful technique to identify calcified lesions. We learned in the past that more you have calcium, more you have risk for the procedure in terms of crossing the lesion, opening the lesion with a balloon, stenting the lesion in terms of deliverability, section, risk of malexpansion of the stent, damaging the polymer when you try to cross the lesion, which is calcified. And also because you have to go to high pressure, sometimes risk of perforation, and late risk of restenosis and stent thrombosis. There is many studies about that, and I think the best one is the study from Dr. Généreux, published 7 years ago, who showed that the more you have calcium, the more you have risk, and you can see that in terms of cardiac death is very clear, in terms of target lesion revascularization too, and of course in terms of MACE, so up to 20% at follow-up in patients with included in ACUITY and Horizon trial. Now we learn also that the quantification of calcification is a good predictor of problems. For example, the arc of calcium, the length of the calcified lesion, and the thickness of the calcified lesion. And Fujino from Japan has built a very nice score, including the angle, the calcium thickness, and the calcium length. And according to the score, you can predict the risk of malexpansion. So, for example, if you have a calcified lesion with a thickness of more than 0.5 millimeter, longer than 5 millimeter, and an angle more than 180 degrees, the risk of malexpansion is 1/3 of the cases. So I think this score is very useful, especially if you use intracoronary imaging. So to treat this lesion, we have many possibilities, including balloons. So we have non-compliant balloons, we have cutting balloons, we have the shockwave balloon, which I think is now available in Egypt. And we have also debugging devices like a rotablator, very well known, laser, and more recently the shockwave technology. So the big question is how to select the most appropriate approach according to the patient and the lesion. So I will give you a few examples. So of course, it's very important to assess the vessel and the lesion before starting the procedure. Then to obtain an optimal lesion preparation using all these devices that are available. Check for optimal stent apposition and expansion using the stent boost or equivalent. Intracoronary imaging can be also good. And as we have discussed last year, time is our friend when you deploy a stent, especially when it's calcified. And of course, optimize the stent deployment if needed, and then you can use a non-compliant balloon, very high pressure balloon. The shockwave technology can be useful also. But be careful when you use a new balloon to increase, to improve stent deployment. It's better to decrease the size of the stents if you go to very high pressure, because the risk of coronary rupture is increasing. So let's see a first case example. It's a relatively young patient, 64 years old, with a lot of calcification in the left main, LAD, and circ. And you can see that in the circ, there is a big nodule of calcium, and the proximal and mid LAD is also with a lot of calcium. This is a cranial view. You can see also a nodule in the distal left main, so a lot of calcium. And I think there is like this kind of cases where you should start with rotablator. And in this case, I think we cannot treat correctly this kind of lesions without rotablation. So we prepare the lesion with rotablation, both lesions, so LAD and circ. I will go back just to show you. Okay, sorry. Also that we have treated the big nodule of calcium in the circ with rotablation. And then we, after predilatation, we deploy a stent. And you can see that despite a good predilatation, despite rotablation, the stent is not fully open at this part. So, and we don't see it clearly in the angiogram. We see that there is some residual lesion, but not too much. But if you look with stent boost, then you can see that the stent is not fully open. And of course, you can treat that by using a non-compliant balloon. Try to grab the patient, and you have to remove, do a costal resection. And he was unable to grab the LAD because of the deformation of the route due to the previous pneumonectomy. So we decide to treat the patient by PCI. So you can see that there is a lot of tubes in this patient. So we start by treating the right, and you can see that we had a very good result with a 3.5 Xience stent at 20 atmosphere. And then for the left, which is very severe, we decide, because there is a lot of calcification, we decide to use shockwave technology. So this is another view. Now we have 3 wires, one in the LAD, one in the intermediate branch, and one in the circ. And then we use a 3-0 shockwave balloon. You can see that there is still a waste at that time in the circ lesion. We start to disappear with several runs of ultrasound. Then we have used a 3.5, prepared the LAD with a 3.5 also, so the distal left main and LAD, and then we stent from left main to circ with a long 3.5 stent. Then we have done the proximal optimization technique with a 5.0, and of course, because there was a long lesion of the LAD, we have done T-shape technique for treating both. Then we do a KISS, a tracing balloon inflation for opening the intermediate branch, and a final repot to be sure that the stent will be fully open. So this is the final result. And I think that without this shockwave technology, we'll not be able to obtain this kind of result in an emergency situation. So my conclusion is that it's very important to take time when you see the angiogram to assess the lesion, optimize the guide support, because we need to guide support. Take time to prepare the calcified lesion. And if you think about rota, you should use it, because usually if you don't use it, you regret. Very important not to stent if the balloon is not perfectly open. and then we can move to different balloons or larger burr or shockwave, and try to find the optimal balance between the benefit and risk. So rotablator, for example, there is a learning phase. We may do shortcuts when we have angulation. We may have slow flow or no reflow. On the opposite, shockwave is more intuitive. It's very powerful, but it's not highly deliverable. So that's why we have to think about different technologies during this kind of procedure, when we have calcified lesion. So I thank you very much for your attention, and I am fully open to the discussion.
Dr. Sharif.
Thank you, Terry, for the excellent presentation as usual. I have two questions for you. The first one, if yes. I have the rotablator and the shockwave, can you tell us when to use this, when it is preferred the rota and when it is preferred the shockwave? And my second question is about how to deal with in-stent restenosis calcific lesion.
Terry, did you hear it? Terry? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Did you hear two questions? Okay. Can you answer it? Okay.
Yeah. So the first question, rotablator versus shockwave. Of course, it's not easy to understand, but I think the main discussion is about the kind of lesion that we are treating. So, for example, the first case that I showed is clearly a case where rotablator will be the best approach because the shockwave balloon will not be able to reach the proximal or mid-LAD. So when you have long lesions, when you have difficult access with the balloon, I think it's better to start with rotablator. On the opposite, if you have a lesion which is relatively easy to access, I think shockwave technology is very useful. But it's a very short balloon, so if you have a very long lesion, it's not so simple to treat a lesion which is, I don't know, 40 millimeter in length with a balloon which is 10 millimeter in length. So when you have a long lesion, I think rotablator can be the first choice in the majority of cases. And for the second question about in-stent restenosis with calcified lesion, I think it's very important to understand what is the mechanism of restenosis. Is it because the stent was not fully deployed? So intracorneal imaging can be very useful, for example. If the stent is not fully open, you can use non-compliant balloon or OPN-NC. And if it's not working, the shockwave technology can be very useful. We have a lot of cases like that now. And if the mechanism is different, so not a stent which is not fully open, but a stent which is fully open with calcification inside the stent, which is something that you can see sometimes. Then you can treat this lesion like you treat a non-restenotic lesion. So it could be rotablation, it could be shockwave, non-compliant balloon.
Okay.
Thank you, Terry.
Dr. Okay. Dr. Wael.
Thanks for. Thanks for the lecture. I only have a question about a patient with a calcific lesion. Now, a patient is brought to the cath lab and we injected him. We found a heavily calcific lesion. The patients, not all cath labs are equipped with IVUS and Rota. In such a case, would you try with a non-compliant balloon, and if you fail, so you prepare IVUS and Rota, or you prepare an IVUS and Rota first and then you try? So, you got the question?
Yeah, of course. So, I think if you have not a rotablator on board, it's difficult to treat calcified lesions because you may have to switch during the procedure. Of course, you can have a closed center where you can send the patient, but it's not very comfortable to have a failure and then to transfer the patient to another center to do a rotablation in an emergency situation. So my recommendation is when you have calcified lesion, maybe it's better to start with a rotablator on board. Of course, you will not use it, but you can start with a non-compliant balloon, prepare the lesion, and if needed, you can move to rotablation if you are not able to open the lesion. I think in the past we were saying that it's not good to do rotablation after pre-dilatation with a balloon. But in fact, if you are not able to open the lesion, I think it's not an issue. So you can try with non-compliant balloon, and if you are not able to open the lesion, then move to rotablation or shockwave.
If a dissection happens, what if a dissection happens during preparation by a non-compliant balloon?
If you have dissection, it's a different problem. So that's why I think it's very important to have rotablation on board.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Gamila?
Very interesting presentation, sir. And you started your presentation by telling how the CT can offer prognostic information by the Agatston score and so. But I think recently there were some data about new scoring systems like spatially weighted score, coronary calcium score, and so on. So what's your think, especially when the Agatston score is 0? Do you have a comment upon that? Sometimes you have a Agatston score 0, and you know it's usually it doesn't predict the outcome in many patients. There are new data about some new scoring systems. For example, one of these systems is the scoring the spatially weighted coronary calcium scoring. Do you have comment upon that?
But you mean the calcium scoring by MSCT?
Yes.
Yeah. I think at the level of individual patients, you have a very bad correlation between the calcium score and the presence of coronary disease. You may have a patient with a very high calcium score, 80 years old patient with high calcium score and no significant lesion in the vessel. On the opposite, you may have a relatively low calcium score and a significant lesion, which is a very soft lesion with not a lot of calcification. So I think if you do MSCT, I think it's better to do really a MSCT, not only calcium score, but look at the vessel, look at the plaque that you have, etc., etc.
This is totally, yes, I agree with you, sir.
Dr. Ayman?
Dr. Lefebvre, I enjoyed your presentation very much. Two quick questions. Have you seen any complications with IVL? And the second is, which calcified lesions do you look at and then decide, I'm not going to do this case, I will send this patient to surgery?
The second question is not easy one because I think it depends not only on the one lesion, but on the global appraisal of the patient. So,
I mean, with the calcium, with the heavy calcium.
Usually the patient with a lot of calcification are old, so they are not always good candidates for surgery. So you really have to assess the patient according to risk factors, risk of surgery, extent of the lesions, etc., and then decide. But the calcium by itself usually is not the only reason to send the patient to surgery. And today it's even more because we have shockwave technology. Is very useful, especially when you have big nodules of calcium. I think the nodules of calcium are very difficult to treat, even with rotablation. But with a shockwave, usually you are able to open, to break the calcium and then open the vessel correctly.
Terry, I have two comments. Thank you very much for...
About complication of IVL, the only thing that we have seen is balloon rupture sometimes. And it's very important to have an optimal preparation of the balloon and wait a few seconds before doing a second run of ultrasound.
And that's not related to balloon pressure.
To avoid this kind of complication.
Terry, thank you. But I have one comment and one question. So, just 3 weeks ago, I have a live case with Antonio Colombo on the Emirates Society, heavy calcifications. He did astonishing. He had a mixed rota with shockwave in the same patient. I mean, rota followed by shockwave. Is it usual for you to do it in your center? The second, that I have a case just 3 days ago with Dr. Amr Zaki, uncrossable lesion. I tried first to do a balloon, then this uncrossable, all the balloon ruptured, then prepared for rota. It was difficult to cross with the twin pass wire, and even with the balloon over the wire. And we failed to cross just 2 wires because already you're afraid to pass just the rota wire alone. So, and then finally, the only solution is to cross with the rota wire. So in your technically, are you trying to cross with the rota first, or you go for the workhorse wire and then with the microcatheters? How do you treat the uncrossable lesion?
So it's difficult. When you have crossed the lesion with a wire, whatever the wire, so CTO wire, for example, what can be useful is laser. Because in the vast majority of cases, you are able to open the lesion with laser and then to treat conventionally the lesion. But you have not, if the laser is not available in your center, it's difficult. And what you can try to do is to exchange a wire with a rota wire, but it's not 100% success. So it's not very simple. For the other question about rota plus shockwave, we have no experience with that. Maybe one or 2 cases, no. Sometimes it's very useful because you have dilate with a rotator, and then you are not able to open the lesion. So you can move to a shockwave, and usually the lesion, you are able to open the lesion. But then you increase the cost of the procedure. It could be very high. So, he
tried to cross with the shockwave failed, and then he decided the rota and then mix it with the shockwave. That's why he picked the second. So if you think what is the size of the calcifications which allow you to cross with the shockwave balloon, because sometimes it's difficult to cross. It's not a deliverable balloon. It's not easy balloon to cross. How do
of
you?
Course.
Yeah, because it's so expensive. So for your experience,
if we think
what are the vessels which are not allowed?
Some difficulties to cross the lesion with a shockwave balloon. We pre-dilate with non-compliant balloon.
Okay.
But it depends on where is the lesion. So if it's a distal right and you have a lot of calcification all along the right, then it's better to start with rotablation because you will have a lot of difficulties to treat the lesion. Of course, you can use extension guides in order to reach the lesion with this kind of balloon. So I agree that it's not a very good balloon, but it's not so bad. So it's like old non-compliant balloon.
Okay, last questions before the live box. Okay.
Hi, Terry. It's very nice to have you with us. Ahmed Al-Gharid. A short question, Terry. Indication of rotablator in aneurysmal dilatations. Because some papers say that it is contraindicated.
What? I didn't get the question. Indication in aneurysm?
Is it allowed to cross with the rota? So there be a debulking calcification in aneurysm, and we have to define the aneurysm first. Is it aneurysm or not aneurysmal? Your answer.
I don't know. if there is a lot of calcification, depends really on the amount of calcification. So if it's not a very high amount of calcification, we use non-compliant balloons. And sometimes, if needed, we use rotablation.
Okay, thank you.
But what is interesting is that we have the OPN NC balloon, and you can go up to 50 atmosphere, and the majority of lesion can be opened with this balloon if you are able to cross the lesion with the balloon.
Okay, thank you very much, Terry.